Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. And again, thank you for tuning in. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a couple of subjects. We're going to be talking about the proposals for a limited ceasefire that could be a step for a bigger ceasefire. This proposal is coming from Egypt. We're going to be talking about the responses that are coming from Iran following the attack of Israel, and in particular, the speech of the supreme leader in the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and what we are to expect moving forward. And we're also going to be talking about the latest developments when it comes to Lebanon and the region. I'm going to start off with Gaza. Gaza is a very important thing to highlight because of the level of devastation that's happening nowadays in Gaza as a whole, but in particular in North Gaza. Israel is waging a war of extermination, an ethnic cleansing campaign, a full-fledged genocide campaign in North Gaza with complicity from all of the global administrations that are still silent or trying to cover it up or downplay it or ignore it or deny it. We are talking about ethnic cleansing of families, destruction of whole buildings with families inside them, destruction of hospitals, not allowing any civil services to function, killing everyone who tries to assist any human being in North Gaza. And the situation is only getting worse. And despite attempts from certain figures, in particular in hospitals, in the civil service, in North Gaza, to speak with people who have influence, with people who have reach, with certain coordinators, nothing is happening to apply pressure on the genocide state and the genocide forces to back down from their ethnic cleansing campaign of extermination. You're talking about a large concentration camp in general in Gaza, but now the fact that they are committing that they are actually implementing an ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza, and they are asking people to move from one place to another. The big case was in Jabalia. The big massacres were in Jabalia initially, although of course it spread out through all across of Gaza, where they were telling people you need to leave and you need to flee to Beit Lahia only to follow them to Beit Lahia and force them to go somewhere else. The plan of Israel, the ultimate plan from all of this, is to ethnically cleanse completely the northern part of Gaza that is north to the Netzarim line. Now, we still have certain areas that are very densely populated in North Gaza, apart from Jabalia, for example, and Beit Lahia. However, you need to understand the pattern that Israel is operating on, and the fact that they will continue to follow these people from one place to another up until they get rid of all of the population in North Gaza and start the settlement building process and the infrastructure and property process that they are looking to implement in North Gaza on top of the bodies of the innocent civilians massacred in this genocide campaign. They are still facing resistance. However, they are still facing resistance in every part of North Gaza, and we have the Palestinian resistance publishing footage and videos of them targeting all of them. So despite the fact that they are conducting such mass-scale destruction in a barbaric manner, they are still being met with fierce resistance from the resistance movements in North Gaza. However, the situation is catastrophic. It's beyond imagination, and the images and stories that we're hearing on a day-to-day basis, and I try and share some of them, what we can on this platform, on my community tab, are nothing, not 0.001% from what's actually happening. So it's very important to keep highlighting what is happening in the northern part of Gaza and, of course, all across. and not allow that to be something people get used to. No one should get used to atrocities like that, and action must be taken to stop this genocide entity and everyone supporting it, so that the people can enjoy at least basic human rights in the first part, and hopefully in the long term, full equal human rights in accordance to the UN Declaration of Universal Human Rights. This is the first part that I wanted to talk to you about. The second part that I wanted to talk to you about is Lebanon. We've had these intense days between Iran and Israel. Israel carried out this attack on Iran that I will be talking about in a bit, and we haven't heard a lot about Lebanon. However, we are still seeing a lot of stuff happening in Lebanon, and what we're seeing is massive losses coming against the genocide forces. They are suffering tremendous losses when it comes to Lebanon. Today, 3 fighters of Hezbollah took down 20 of the genocide forces, killing 3 and wounding 17. And reports say that they fled. That's only one part of over 20 operations coming from Hezbollah on the borders with the occupying entity and with attacks deep into Israeli territories. They also took down a Hermes 900 with a land-to-air missile that, again, they did not specify the details of. So you're talking about, again, another day of massive losses when it comes to Israel. Israel, although they are trying to cover up their losses when it comes to Lebanon, however, those attempts are very limited, because at the end of the day, we are seeing footage coming from Hezbollah and from the Lebanese resistance when it comes to these losses. And again, they are not achieving any sort of significant accomplishments when it comes to Lebanon, apart from their usual accomplishments: destruction of civilian buildings, destruction of hospitals, of civil infrastructure, and the massacre of people and innocent civilians. This is what Israel is good at and has been good at. However, when they're faced with true power and resistance, they are cowards as usual, and the timid attack and unsuccessful attack that they had on Iran proves just that. Which leads me to Iran. And yesterday we were talking about the fact that we haven't heard yet about a statement coming from the supreme leader of Iran. Today we had more and more comments coming from Iran about the attack, about the potential response, and a bit of highlight as to what we were to expect if the situation continues as it is, especially coming from the Iranian side, seeing as this attack was conducted by Israel. So we had this article in IRNA about the supreme leader of Iran, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and his first mention of the Israeli attack against Iran. And in this article, they said the supreme leader made the comment on Sunday, and the comment was, Israeli mischief should neither be magnified nor downplayed. He had this comment on Sunday as he received families of the Iranian military personnel martyred while defending the country's security, known as Martyrs of Security. He said that the Zionist regime exaggerated the aggression it committed against Iran early on Saturday. Their exaggeration is wrong, but downplaying what they did is wrong as well, Ayatollah Khamenei added. He also said that the Israeli regime has miscalculations towards Iran, as it is yet to know the country and its people and understand the level of their power and determination. Quote, we should make them understand all these, end quote, he stressed. The leader also said that officials should make the Zionist regime understand the level of the Iranian nation's power and determination, calling on the officials to do whatever is in the best interest of the country. Ayatollah Khamenei emphasized the importance of preserving the country's security, especially the psychological security of the people, saying that causing fear and doubt in their minds is rejected. Anybody who stands against any act of evil, from robbery to murder, smuggling and spreading rumors, is regarded as the guardian of security, he said. What preserves the security of a country is its national power, the strength of that country being strong in all aspects. Strong in science, strong in economy, strong in defense, strong in armaments. These maintain and ensure the security of the country, he said. Whenever Iranian authorities turned away from pursuing tools of power because of adopting wrong policies, the enemy gained dominance over the country, Ayatollah Khamenei noted, citing as examples Iran's weakness during the eras of Qajar and Pahlavi, which led to the occupation of the country in the First and Second World Wars, despite the fact that Tehran had announced its neutrality. The supreme leader also criticized the world, including some governments and the United Nations, for failing to stop what the Zionist regime is doing in Gaza and Lebanon, which he describes as the most brutal war crimes. He said that the regime is violating all rules of war, stressing that the world, all the governments, especially Islamic governments, should stand up against the Zionist regime. It is not the issue of whether to assist the regime or not, Ayatollah Khamenei said, stressing that the least help to the regime is regarded as a great sin. A global coalition must be formed, as well as a political coalition, an economic coalition, and, if necessary, a military coalition against the malicious Zionist regime that is committing the most brutal war crimes today, the leader emphasized. So the statement coming from Sayyid Ayatollah Ali Khamenei doesn't have specific guidance when it comes to the response, and we can understand that by his approach towards the officials of the country. In particular, this sentence here, the leader also said the officials should make the Zionist regime understand the level of the Iranian nation's power and determination, calling on the officials to do whatever is in the best interest of the country. Now, if Sayyid Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is leaving that to the officials of the country, well, what the officials of the country say? The officials of the country said that we will be responding. We will be responding in the relevant time, and we will be responding in the right place and when is suitable for us. So they haven't ruled out a lack of well, in many cases you can't say that they outright said or hinted that they will not respond, but the fact that they are saying we will respond in the right time hints that they are leaving a certain gap in the meantime for certain progresses to be made, similar to what they've done in July following the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, when the United States asked them, and this was confirmed by the Iranian president, that don't attack Israel yet. We're having progress when it comes to the ceasefire. If you attack them now, we will have a certain problem. Now, the fact that they are not elaborating too much could mean a couple of things. Number one, saying that we will respond in the right time is putting themselves in the circle of responding. Lack of response from Iran is quite unlikely based on the pattern that we've seen from Iran in the past year when it comes to Israel. Why? Because firstly, their initial response in April and their attack on Israel came as a response to Israeli aggression against one of their embassies / consulates in Syria. So it wasn't on Iranian territory, but they deemed that an attack on Iranian sovereignty. Therefore, they resorted to attacking Israel directly from Iranian territories. And many people, including myself, did not assume that Iran would do such a move, but rather potentially use some of its allied forces in the region to conduct an attack on Israel. Yet they carried out an attack on Israel, the biggest drone attack in history, with many missiles landing in Israel. And then October the 1st came with an unprecedented attack, with the majority of the missiles landing on the genocidal states, bases, and strategic locations that are targeting innocent civilians, and where they launch their attacks from on the innocent civilians in Gaza and in Lebanon. And the fact that Iran is saying that we will respond makes it exceptionally likely that they will respond. They will most likely respond to this attack. However, when that is something that, many people are saying, we could be having a period where they will potentially give and use their lack of a response as leverage, potentially, or they are only saying that and are planning an immediate attack. Because one day after the attack, we heard reports coming from Iraq that they closed their airspace in preparation for an immediate Iranian attack. However, they also can't give their enemies too much information. When will that attack happen? How will that attack happen? We don't know. But in the meantime, we are having certain talks about a ceasefire. Is it another talk? Is it something genuine? Again, based on the pattern, it doesn't appear like anything's going to happen when it comes to a ceasefire. However, we had a new proposal coming from the Egyptian president for a 48-hour ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian resistance. That would include releasing 4 Israelis in return to releasing an unspecified number of Palestinians, and that would give 10 further days. That would include talks about an ending of the actual war, and Egypt is labeling that as a starter to a potential ceasefire. Hamas, from their side, they said our red lines haven't changed. And of course, from an Israeli perspective, some analysts inside of Israel are saying it would be delusional to think that Hamas positions have changed. Although we have people who are delusional, who think that, with the assassination of the martyr Yahya Sinwar, that all of a sudden they can reach a ceasefire, not really knowing and understanding how Hamas operates as a movement and what they are about. Now, will it work? Will it not work? So far, Israel is committing a campaign of ethnic cleansing, of starvation, a genocide. The northern part of Gaza, again, suffering the most, with over 1,000 martyrs in 22 days and people dying because of their wounds. Is there a likelihood to have a certain success? Not very likely. Firstly, Israel is not likely to change anything when it comes to that, unless that is the assumptions that Benjamin Netanyahu is delaying the potential ceasefire to the anticipated arrival of Donald Trump. There is no guarantee that Donald Trump is going to become the president, but there is a likelihood that he will. And if he will, there were reports that he had to deal with Benjamin Netanyahu. Do not reach a ceasefire under the Democrats, reach a ceasefire under me, because I want to end all of the conflict in the region. And I want to end the war of Russia in Ukraine. Therefore, this would give a massive boost and a credibility to Donald Trump, which would be a big favor that Netanyahu would give him. Is that the case? There is likelihood that that is the case. So firstly, Netanyahu and Trump are very, very closely tied. They had a very good coordination. Donald Trump made very massive things in favor of Israel, including recognizing the Golan Heights as Israeli, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, followed by pressure from the donors of Donald Trump himself. Sheldon Adelson now is a widow. Miriam Adelson give him hundreds of millions of dollars, and these are the same people who fund Benjamin Netanyahu. So there is likelihood that that would happen. Of course, we had a period where Donald Trump faced sour relations with Benjamin Netanyahu, in particular following the elections in 2020, and after Benjamin Netanyahu congratulated Biden immediately in results that Donald Trump himself cast doubt on. We had lots of problems at the time, and Donald Trump did not recognize the elections at the time, and he criticized Benjamin Netanyahu outright. However, They have since, of course, repaired their relations, and Netanyahu might be returning a favor for Donald Trump. But again, that is only a possibility. That is not a guarantee based on what the genocide state has been doing for the past year. No American consideration stopped them, apart from arguably the level and targets of attacks that Israel conducted when they went on an attack with Iran. Israel did not touch the nuclear power plants. They did not touch the oil facilities. There were reports that they tried to get them, but Iran's air defense systems took them down. However, Israel itself declared that they only targeted military bases inside of Iran. That could well be due to the United States pressure on Israel and the fact that Israel is isolated as a pariah state, even with many of its allies ditching it when it attacked Iran, and from an ongoing perspective, the longevity of the war and the fact that it's still committing war crimes to this day. The third and final thing I want to talk to you about, we had a massive operation today, but we still haven't had elaboration about its nature. A Palestinian citizen of Israel running over 50 Israeli troops who most likely belong to 8,200 squad in Galilot. That's the area that Hezbollah targeted many times, and reports that other movements targeted that area. At least 7 Israel, some reports say 5, some reports say 1, but we had a couple of reports saying 7 were killed and over 50 wounded. This is a very big escalation coming. However, there is no confirmation that the attack was intended. However, the likelihood of that attack being intended is a massive escalation, especially when it comes to individual operations coming from Israel. Israel worked very hard in the past 2 decades to try and eliminate the risk of individual attacks on it by targeting infrastructures, by its whole campaign in the West Bank. We have massive apartheid in the West Bank, checkpoints everywhere, but it still faced these problems. And Al-Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, several months back, they promised them that the era of individual operations is coming. And ever since then, we have seen many attacks coming. One of them was the simultaneous attack when Iran conducted its massive operation True Promise 2 against Israel, where we had 2 individuals from the West Bank conducting an operation in central Israel. This is something very worrying. This is a trend that is worrying Israel very much, because you're talking about internal security and people who they don't know where they're coming from, what they're doing, what they're about to do. It's almost impossible to protect themselves from such actions. But again, all of that is happening due to the continued barbarism of the state of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is putting everyone at risk, first and foremost Israeli people, and of course the genocide he's committing against the Palestinians, and the security in general to the region and to the whole world that is always being underplayed by mainstream media. You're talking about a genocidal pariah mass terror state supported by the US administration being enabled and doing whatever it can. And the effect that it has on the Israeli people has been highlighted yet again with a recent video that we had of a son of a man who was killed after the 7th of October, lashing out Benjamin Netanyahu during a speech that he had, that I will share with you here. If you would give me 1 second. Yeah, so it's this video here.
משפחות יקרות, זכר כולכם תכבדו אותנו, אתם חצופים, אתם חצופים.
So again, this is another sign of the internal division that you're having in Israel, not just from many in the Israeli population against the Netanyahu administration and regime, but internally, really, because as people inside of Israel, some of them are supporting Netanyahu, the continuation and escalation. Also, however, many on the other side are opposing him heavily and viewing all of the losses, all of the lack of security, all of the devastation that is coming on the country as a result of Netanyahu's policies. Many people are calling him the crime minister, someone who, they wish death on him. When Hezbollah attacked his house, they said, we hope he would have been there. And it just highlights how divided the country has been and still is, despite attempts from Benjamin Netanyahu, by the way, to take down and tone down these escalations after he launched this massive escalation against Lebanon. Because before Lebanon, the momentum of the release, the Israeli prisoners movement inside of Israel was exceptionally high, to a level where we reached record levels when it comes to protests inside of Israel. 800,000 Israelis were in the streets in Tel Aviv and in other parts of the country at one point. You're talking about approximately 8% of the population in total, and the pressure and spotlight was on Benjamin Netanyahu. All of the focus was on him. And how does he shift that? Typical, he will go on another escalation where people can turn their attention and achieve certain things that he would view or show his public as accomplishments, like the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and recently the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, and show them, look, we are actually accomplishing certain things. Yes, I haven't brought, the kidnapped, and yeah, there's still risk on Israel. Well, not just risk, they're increasing the level of attacks. Now Hezbollah have the whole northern third of Israel, and you can reach the central part, but the whole top third of north of Israel, you're talking about day-to-day actions and attacks coming from Hezbollah. All of this area is under constant danger, and the general situation in Israel is underplayed again in mainstream media, whether when it comes to the societal problems, the political problems, the military problems, and the economic problems, and the levels of people leaving the country for good, especially the areas that were affected. But it's not just limited to the areas that were affected. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you. And let me open the space up for all of the community check if you have any questions or comments. The Mounts, Brother Mahmoud, do you think if the death of Netanyahu, be it assassination or natural death, could change the whole situation of the war, or the war would still continue? Thanks. I think Benjamin Netanyahu is probably the main obstacle to reaching a ceasefire. However, the problem is with the longevity of this, he managed to drag people with him, people who were considered to be massive opponents, people who viewed him as a threat, but stayed with him for the sake of what they called Israel and the national interest, like Gallant, like Hagari, no less criminals than him, by the way, but they were actively looking for a ceasefire. At one point, the whole negotiating delegation was against Netanyahu. Many more people in the security establishment were against him. But the longer this took, the more it seems that people are actually following Netanyahu and his quest for mass genocide and the embedding of Israel as the only superpower in the region that is beyond any sort of scrutiny or any and stops any attacks against it, no threat, no second place, nothing. So they are actively with him now. However, if he goes away, there is a very high likelihood that we could reach a ceasefire. But before we talk about a ceasefire, if Benjamin Netanyahu gets assassinated or dies from natural causes or is somehow taken down, and there were attempts to take him down, including from the United States administration in a soft military coup, especially with the meetings that, Antony Blinken tried to have with Herzi Halevi on his own, that Netanyahu then criticized. They did not allow him to, but there were many attempts. When they accepted Gantz in the US without Netanyahu's approval, and Netanyahu ordered the Israeli embassy in the US not to welcome him, not to greet him. If he does die, if he is taken down, you are talking about almost with full certainty, an immediate massive civil war inside of Israel, because the society is now very split. However, when you talk about the potential of things escalating, it could escalate much further, because he has a cult following and they're armed. And on the other side, you have people wishing him death and who view him as the biggest catastrophe to the state of Israel, leading it to the current position of a genocidal pariah state being neglected by the whole world, and slowly as well by the countries that are supposed to be closest to it, at least when it comes to establishment. And thank you for that. I hope that elaborates. And Amra, thank you so much for your super. And Jay as well, and the virus 455. Jay is telling me, do you think Trump is a Zionist or just a politician looking for the Jewish vote? Hamas and Hezbollah have crossed the Rubicon and there's no going back. This victory is in sight. Love you, Florida, US. Well, thank you so much, Jay, and much love back to you and everyone listening in Florida and all across the United States. Is Trump a Zionist? That's a genuinely interesting question. I think now we are met with people and faced with people who hold the opinion of, and I will share your comment here, that Donald Trump is a massive Zionist who is no different than other candidates. And you have others, especially those who are supporting Trump, viewing him as someone who is only playing the political game to get himself in and get himself into power and to get the Jewish vote inside of the US because of the strength of the Zionist and Jewish lobbies, of course. And of course, the thing is, the Jewish lobby in the US happens to be a Zionist lobby. There's no denying that. The strength of the Jewish lobby is the strength of the Zionist lobby in the United States. That's something well known by now. Some people are viewing him as a puppet. Some people are viewing him as a person who's trying to get his way. What is the truth? Well, I think we can try and establish the truth by viewing what Donald Trump firstly is about as a presidential candidate, secondly by what he does. So one of the first things, and his campaign is Make America Great Again, right? Make America Great Again, America first. That's Donald Trump. Focus on American economy. We don't want a lot of wars abroad. I'm going to end the war. And as a matter of fact, he has spoken in a very aggressive manner, by the way, against American wars abroad. Now, if we take that approach, okay, and the spending of money on foreign aid, okay, and again, we have comments on him criticizing the spending of money against Israel. However, If you have this man being supported by that lobby, then that lobby has a big hold on him. Meaning, well, I'm not going to give you 100 or 200 million for no reason. I mean, if we think that, we would be naive. So if I have someone, let's say, well, I'm not going to take an example, but an individual X is running for presidency, and there is this organization willing to give him $100 or $200 million for what? For his hair. They need something in return. And when you're talking about the Zionist lobby in the United States, that is of course linked with the state of Israel, they would want certain economic benefits and assurances to do with their economic power and the continuation of their power in the United States and influence, and also the state of Israel. And we saw him implementing certain things when it comes to that previously. Now, he recognized the sovereignty of Israel on the Golan Heights. He moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. He had a proposal that was called the deal of the century. But the question is, who was it in favor of? And what did the Palestinian side think of it? Well, neither the Palestinian Authority, that is considered to be very tied with Israel, nor the Palestinian resistance viewed it in any positive way when it comes to Donald Trump. So we can't establish the notion that Donald Trump is a person who is viewing both sides as equal. He is favoring the Israeli side. Of course, we can hear that from his tone as well. Like Donald Trump, when he is talking about the war, he criticizes the Palestinian resistance, of course. He is still having a very harmful and dangerous tone against the Palestinian rights and Palestinian supporting groups that is labeled as pro-Palestinian, but really and truly, I mean, even the term pro-Palestinian can be deceiving in many cases. You're talking about people who are pro-human rights, primarily and anti-genocide. That's what it is. It's not about picking a football club or a hockey team that you want to support here. You're talking about people with support for human rights and anti-genocide and barbarism. And we all know from many of his statements what he is about. Is this a game? Well, if it is the game, it's still serving Israel. Unless I see something that I can say, well, Donald Trump did that just to get in power, and then he would play things differently. Well, he was in power for 4 years. We haven't seen anything for the benefit of the Palestinian people. Maybe it could be due to Donald Trump, firstly, having extremely dangerous, hate-filled, racist people around him, and people who are warmongers, initially like John Bolton, right? And then other extremely radical figures. And of course, his administration, you saw lots of resignations, people going back and forth and then switching sides, and Steve Bannon and after Steve Bannon and all of that. And again, that's something we might see in the future too, but we haven't seen anything significant when it comes to Palestine. Now, is Palestine, that's another question here. Is Palestine the only thing that Donald Trump will be thinking about? No, he wouldn't only be thinking about Palestine. But now it's in the headlines. It's in the headlines more than it is when it comes to Ukraine, isn't it? Now, when it comes to Ukraine, he was very clear, we're going to cut the funding, or, there's a potential we're going to cut, we're not going to be sending money, all right? And we'll end the war, and he's friends with Zelensky. Why are you not having the same approach when it comes to Israel and saying it clearly? Again, because you're tied. And if you're tied by a certain group, then you are bound by their rules. Now, we can't say that is definite and is a definite parameter to judge Donald Trump if he comes to power, right? But what that does tell us, as people who are supportive of human rights and are against wars and against genocide, that this man did not provide one reassurance that he is anti-genocide. He's downplaying it to the maximum extent. He is still delegitimizing the Palestinian side. He is going out against the Palestinian side in any possibility, in any chance that he has, really. Although his supporters, or at least some of his supporters, really do care about the Palestinian cause. In many cases, we saw rallies of Trump where people were chanting Genocide Joe. Why would they call him Genocide Joe and not something else? It's because they have a problem against the genocide that Joe Biden is supporting. Well, if you have a fan base that is vocal enough to a level where they criticize genocide in your rallies, then why are you not representing that will of the people who support you that much? And why should we expect something else from you when you come to power? So if the case of human rights, and if the case of fighting wars and fighting genocide and spending taxpayers' money on blood, basically, stealing it from the people's pockets, putting it in the military-industrial complex pockets and the big pockets to support wars against innocent civilians, and we're seeing what that money is causing now, your support, you know, why should I trust that? If we care about that, then Donald Trump did not provide sufficient evidence, or at least sufficient statements, to say that he is against this and he will be anything different than, firstly, what he has been before and what he has been during this campaign. And I hope that elaborates. Of course, you can talk more about the subject, but I hope, you know, I elaborated in that very short period. And Jay, thank you so much, and much love back, and thank you for your support. And the other one, let me check if there was a question in the other super. No, the virus 455 said. Okay, we had more elaboration about the Trump thing coming from, I think it was Riza here. Let me just highlight the comment. Riza, you said, Ryan, excuse me, thank you. You said Trump wants to extend Israel. Don't think he will have a ceasefire. Don't trust USA and Israel. Look what they did to Nasrallah. He gave him 1 week ceasefire. They killed him. Again, that is what's happening. And, you know, Trump did say Israel is tiny. And although he had statements about the Make America Great Again, America First, and although we have seen none of that being implemented, at least when it comes to Israel, it's as if the Zionist lobby in the United States dictates who becomes president. And I think all of that takes the way away from the momentum of the genuine alternatives, like Jill Stein and like other alternatives in the United States, who actually oppose genocide and who actually have a campaign for the American people and the investment of American money on American people. Because you're still talking about only Trump and only Harris. And this is how they create this idea and embed the idea of the two-party system. That should be behind us, by the way. However, again, not all the people care about what happens abroad and when it comes to the United States. However, those who do have very strong opinions. And Brahim, thank you so much, my friend. He said, Salam, brother. This talk about Israel and Iran, talking about the zip strike, do you think all of this is fake or real game? Brahim, no, it's absolutely a real game. I think the people who are trying to portray it as fake, who are people who are serving the genocide state and their backers. Why? Because they want to portray it and spew venom and propaganda in the minds of the people that no one is capable against Israel. Well, if no one is capable, and that's the question, if no one is capable against Israel that's backed by the United States, then why hasn't Israel won? Why didn't they already implement their will? Right? When they achieve their objectives, it's because they're facing resistance primarily. Number one, from Gaza, then from all of the other supporting fronts. The main two fronts, Gaza, number one, the people, unbelievable resilience, and the resistance, unbelievable against Israel. Then Lebanon, and now we can see the sacrifices as well. And then all of the other fronts, who is backing that officially and participating, by the way, against all odds, against everyone's thoughts, against all of the Iranophobes and all of the sectarian talk and racist talk against Iran. They are there. When they attacked Israel, the missiles landed, right? And Israel is petrified from them. And they have 1 million calculations against it, which, by the way, says one thing worth mentioning here. Israel also, we had reports that Israel notified Iran before the attack. Do you know that? We had reports coming that the officials from the Netherlands told Iran that Israel is about to conduct an attack. And we had that reported in a couple of media outlets. And we had another report, of course, that Russia warned Iran, told them that we know an attack is coming on you, so be careful. But if the reports were Israel notified Iran, doesn't that say that there is a new equation and there is genuine intimidation? And again, it's not something like magical or beyond imagination. It's basic. It's very basic. Why? Because Israel only understands when it's met with force. And they were met with tremendous force from Iran. It shook them. It caused earthquakes against them. So it's very real. It's very real. And again, I think the people casting doubt on it are many of them are people with a defeated mentality, or people who have an agenda to downplay the accomplishments of the resistance and to downplay the great role that Iran is playing. And Ming Laib is saying half of them congressmen boycotted Netanyahu's speech. Thank you for that. Yes, he's getting more criticism, mainly from people in the Democratic Party. But again, really, if we want to talk about alternatives, if we want to talk about alternatives based on our interest in human rights and our fight against this global endless war and mass terror supported by the United States, implemented by this genocidal entity, well, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are examples, are they? We have Democrats. The Democrats have supported this all along. They are no alternative when it comes to Israel. If you care about human rights genuinely, it's neither the Democrats nor the Republicans, because they lick the same boots and they take money and seek the money of the same groups who have Israel's interest as one of the main things they are concerned about. If you care about human rights, you would give an opportunity to the alternatives of these people, candidates who are outright anti-genocide, do not get funded by the Zionist lobby, and candidates who sacrificed by themselves for them standing up against this genocidal entity. Building a new world, I don't foresee any end until the entity ends. Me neither. Is a unified resistance capable of taking back the territory from the river to the sea? Yes, but that again is something that it can't necessarily be taken as something imminent, but you can't rule out the fact that it can be imminent. A unified resistance front is causing all of this now. A unified resistance front that we haven't seen really to this level, to that scale, with so many sacrifices on so many fronts. That's something unheard of previously. The level. And no, the problems will not end until the genocide entity ends, until the regime of apartheid, until this cancerous, and cancer is a very light word, Zionism ends. Why? Because it's an ethno-religious supremacist entity based on racial segregation. Fascism simply does not work. It does not work. Yet, the United States administration and many Western establishments are still trying to whitewash it, legitimize it, and call for, a de-escalation. Why? To preserve the apartheid regime that Israel is implementing against the Palestinians. Even if we want to talk about a two-state solution. If you want to talk about a two-state solution, how would you want the Palestinian state to look like? What would you like it to be called? And in comparison, what would you like Israel to be like? Well, clearly you don't have a problem with Israel being a Jewish supremacy. So are you okay with the Palestinian calling itself any other religious supremacy and implementing apartheid against the Jewish people? Is that acceptable from your end? No, of course not. Although, by the way, even in the West Bank, we have a beautiful example of harmony between Muslims, Christians, and the Samaritan Jewish community that has been there for hundreds of years, before any Zionist came from Khazaria. So the only way you can end this is by implementing a government that promotes genuine equal rights, rule of law, equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea, with democracy, with contemporary and historical rights for the Palestinian people, and also with punishment to the criminals as well. And again, when we talk about a one state for everyone. The Israelis, the Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, non-believers, whatever it is, equal rights, very simple. That's the only way you can stop. And again, that's not something you can stop just by talking, by the way. Israel clearly, and that's why we have this ongoing war in the region, 31 years of a peace process that was public, although we had certain talks before, led to nothing but them expanding and taking more from the Palestinians and killing more people, more administrative detention, more destruction. The squatting establishment in the West Bank went from 100,000 to nearly 1 million now. All because the Palestinian side in that part, leadership at least, and anyone supporting them, only chose the path of talking. Well, you saw what happens when you just talk to them. They have no respect for you. They have no respect for you whatsoever. And they only change when they're met with force. And Angela as well, thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. Let's go to take a couple of questions. And Omar Zabani and Ming Layip as well, thank you so much. And Omar is saying, rumors suggest the IOF may be planning a withdrawal from Lebanon soon while unable to stop attacks in northern Palestine. What might this mean for the future of the resistance fronts? Listen, I think Israel is dragging this, the genocidal entity of Israel is dragging this only to prove a point. They know very well they will not be defeating the Palestinian resistance, and they will not be defeating the Lebanese resistance. Do you know why? Because these people are the indigenous people of the land. They're made by this land, and they are the true owners of this land, unlike the imposter squatting establishment that came and based its whole establishment on theft, mass expulsion, killing, and a pseudo history with pseudo people and pseudo everything. Hyper-pathological liars. They will never defeat them. Why? Because all of the reasons that the resistance established itself upon and Israel's opposition established itself upon still persists. As a matter of fact, Israel is looking to expand it. And that's what everyone needs to understand. Not only is Israel saying, I am a supremacist entity that does not view any non-Jew as a human being and view them as below me, as a goy who is there to serve me, and I can kill any of them whenever I want. They're not just saying that. They're looking, I believe all of that, and I'm looking to expand my belief on other parts in the region and potentially the world. Do you understand that? This is what they're doing now. And anyone is delusional to think that any resistance will stop. Now, what now? What, because you killed a couple of leaders in Gaza and Lebanon? What the hell are you thinking? You killed many great leaders before of, the resistance. You're not going to do anything to them. You're delusional. After all of these sacrifices, you think they'll give up? No way. Plus, you're not reading what's happening. You're not reading what's happening on the ground, the level of losses that they are facing, the awful situation they're in, the tens of thousands of soldiers they lost and would not admit, not now nor in the future, by the way. The fact that they are unable to get anyone to fight for them, not internally nor external. The fact that people are leaving the country in droves and said goodbye to the idea, this falsehood of this Jewish state that the Zionist movement was selling to us. You're not reading what's happening. So they will have to, not only they're going to withdraw from Lebanon, they're going to withdraw from Palestine. That's what's going to happen. Zionism will be withdrawing from Palestine, from the river to the sea. That's what's going to happen. And all what they're doing now, by stretching this further, by committing more crimes against the innocent people, the innocent children, is only to cover up their massive failure and a way to try and make the people kneel down and submit to the supremacy of the Zionist entity and the fact that they are above them as human beings. And guess what? That's not gonna happen. And again, because I had other people ask me about pulling from Lebanon. Firstly, where did they go in Lebanon anyway? What marginal entries? Hezbollah are targeting them in Palestinian occupied territories. They're going to Lebanon to take a couple of selfies and paying for the selfies with their lives. Like some of these TikTok people who stand on a very dangerous location just to take a selfie and then they die. They're doing that. The IDF, the IOF, or IGF, or ITF, call them whatever you like. Jimmy Eyes, have you heard that the CIA is building concentration camps in North Gaza and use biometrics in exchange for aid? All of Gaza is a concentration camp. People are being burnt alive in Gaza. Gaza has been a concentration camp for a very long time. And any action from the CIA is the typical complicity from the US administration supporting this criminal genocide entity. And yes, they are doing that, by the way, under the cover of certain private organizations that belong to Israel, by the way, and some of them in coordination with the CIA. And that's where you see the role of the enlightened Western democracies play in this genocide, whether when it comes to, of course, the direct support coming from the US or the military aid that other countries are sending, the fact that Germany is defending the fact that they're going to send all military aid for Israel against the civilians as well, the spy planes from the UK to support Israel, supposedly to rescue the prisoners. All of that is complicity in genocide. Complicity in genocide. And with regards to the North, it's part of the big plan to completely empty the North and begin the settlement plan, maybe, the squatting plan, excuse me. The squatting plan in North Gaza is very real. You have people who are, very genuine about that. But again, how likely is that to happen, even if they ethnically cleanse everyone, but we still, by the way, have people. And what are they going to remain with the resistance? What are they going to do? Right. So even if that's their plan, it is very, very far from being implemented. And ultimately, all of what's happening now will lead to the destruction of the Zionist regime in Israel. And Brahim, thanks again. You said, what are your thoughts about Trump's new Muslim voters that were shown on the media today, like some sensation, just vote fishing or something bigger? I haven't seen a lot. I've seen a couple of videos like that. But of course, I mean, it's typical. You know, they're going after the Muslim vote. They're going after other communities' votes, trying to portray themselves as appealing, even though it's very stupid, really, in my opinion. At the end of the day, any community should be looking at the overall good of the country that they're living in, regardless of which community they fall under. Now, of course, if you are part of a community that has been long suffering, right, and has been discriminated against, yes, we understand that. But I think it's an attempt from Trump, and like other candidates do, other political campaigners, they will try and make themselves appealing to certain groups and certain populations. Okay, last okay, last one. I'll take it from Jimmy. Jimmy again. Jimmy Eyes Mahmoud. The only end I see to this is Israel being overrun and US chased out of the region, meaning massive war expansion, unless the United States administration decides to end this in a civil, peaceful manner and a diplomatic manner. If any of you listen to Vladimir Putin, and if any of you listen to Xi Jinping, and that's not an endorsement, by the way, for them, you will listen to leaders who speak with a level head, who speak with rationality, and who speak with a non-hostile tone that genuinely cares about the peace of the world. However, when you listen to US leaders, when you listen to NATO leaders, you will listen to arrogant warmongers who think they're entitled to run everything and constantly spew venom and propaganda against all of the populations on earth because they believe that they somehow know better than everyone else. BRICS is growing. China's growing, Russia's growing, Iran is growing, the resistance fronts are gaining more power in the region and globally. African nations are rising up. We're having more countries, even in Latin America, having more successes. But all of that is coming simultaneously with a massive failure of the United States administration of terror, conducting this NATO expansion against Russia to take Russia down, and them supporting the genocide in Gaza. And guess what? They're failing. They're failing now. They're going to fail in the future. If they want it to be bloody, it can end in a bloody manner, and they will lead to potentially a very bloody war globally. However, if they have a couple of people with sound minds, with a bit of rationality, they will understand we can preserve our power, we can still remain a superpower, but we can live also in harmony with other powers around us, so long as no one gets in our way. But we also should stop getting in other people's way, in other nations' way, in other nations' way to progress and live and have some sort of independence, to stop stealing other people's resources and treating all other nations as if they are below us, as if they are material, and stop our greed globally. And then we can genuinely have world peace. And we'll wrap it up there. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Thank you very much for everyone who participated. Apologies I didn't take some of your comments, but your contribution is very much valued. Thank you to everyone who sent supers, the virus, Amra J, Ryan, Brahim, Ming Layip, Angela, and Omar Zabani, thank you very much for your supers. I'll hopefully be with you with a video, and we'll have hopefully a live stream again, unless we have a certain progress, something urgent coming up. You'll see me hopefully coming up randomly. In the meantime, guys, take care, stay blessed, enjoy the rest of your week ahead, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone, and take care.